I just wanted to briefly describe my understanding of these love flutes because I think they're really awesome. Um, Started off with this right here. This was made in Alaska. It's not mine. I'm just borrowing it. It's a C, where the ceramic I unintentionally made a C sharp. And what I want to learn is the required hertz or frequency within a chamber that requires a C, so that I could actually accurately create a volume of space that allows the resonance of a C when all these holes are closed. Also, pretty sure I need to work on my holes. I don't know how much the holes make a difference. Working with these instruments is actually pretty new for me. And I stayed up pretty late, and getting this one fired. I made it and shaped it in 2 days, but the shaping was about 6 hours, and then there was shaping. Well, shaping 6 hours. I'd say 6 hours. That includes all the carving. So getting the basic form, was pretty easy, and then doing all the little tiny scoops in there, that's a technique I've been working on over time, and that in itself is just, it can be mind-boggling. Just individually scoop. But this actually has allowed me to hone in that technique a little bit more, so that, as you can see, I got a little bit more consistency in this piece right here with my pattern, whereas got some chaos here. But ultimately, one thing I do like about the chaos in the scooping technique is that it kind of just feels like elements of water, and when I get a shiny glaze on it, it has this really nice glistening effect. But anyway, so yeah, the Love Flute, made in Alaska, from a family of one of my really great friends, and in itself, it tries to replicate everything that Native Indians have established to create these flutes. Right now it is hard for me to play because I freaking cut the if out of my finger. Like, if it hadn't gotten in such an angle, I would have actually reached the bone. And that was just because the blade was hidden while I was brushing things and cleaning up, and full force right into a fucking X-Acto knife. So, it's not just tender, it's just the Band-Aid prevents me from covering the hole properly, so I have to, right now, at least learn to be ambidextrous more with my pinkies, or my pinky at least kind of creates this nice, like, division. So, but this is way more comfortable. Right now, another thing I wanted to share was the element of these Love Flute systems. Basically, from my understanding and science and principles, is this is a basic Venturi system, because you have a larger chamber with a slower airflow that then passes through a smaller, a tapered passage that then moves into a larger passage. So you're dealing with the basic Bernoulli principle, where air moving over a surface or a curved surface, which is this little bridge right here, when this gets locked in, kind of got this thing tied down so you can't really see the notch that I have cut out of there. But basically, this allows it to move from a larger chamber in through and over a bridge, what I'm calling the bridge right now, that speeds up the air. And that in itself is the basic Bernoulli principle, which the Venturi systems are based off of. So it's very interesting learning these flutes and building off of them, understanding what makes the whisper sound, and honestly, I don't know terminology, and I'm still, I just found a couple of pages and tried to research what love flutes are. I want to find some keen And I've done a lot of instruments in my life, so this will probably be my sixth or seventh instrument that I've worked with. So ultimately, my fingers are not unfamiliar with keen, nor are my ears unfamiliar with matching tone. Right now, I at least downloaded a basic tuner app that told me that this thing is playing at a C sharp. It said C sharp number 5, and then we got E and F, and then G sharp, I think. So this is definitely, it's interesting, but I really like the way the tones fit together. I like the way my ears, because I have a blown eardrum on this side and acute hearing on this side, so normal and acute, which makes an interesting resonation difference when I pick up frequencies. But so far, I just really love. I love the way it moves through the notes and the whisper. I called it a whisper flute before I learned the name of it being a love flute. But I like the higher ones, the higher notes. It feels like it connects me with Celtic heritage that I have, and then the lower notes connects me with some Indian culture heritage that I have. That's both blood and culture. But so high is like. And you can get to the low. So if I were to stay in the high, it makes me feel Celtic. Right now, I'm just, it's only when I'm relaxed and I'm not trying to emphasize showing something that I find the harmonies and the notes that really reach out. Like ultimately, I often wonder what I don't know what this would sound like if it was wider, shorter. I believe there would be a deeper sound because you get a lower frequency out of the sound waves. This right here, this adaptation basically would allow me to modify or create a longer mouthpiece if I wish, so I can keep this and then add to or just work on various different aspects of modulation. And right now I do have just basic paper towel stuck in there to get it wedged in because I don't have my underglazes and my Aztec gold and the other glazes that I wish to apply to this thing to make it shiny. One of the most interesting things I found, which I think how these flutes started, was actually in making this and then just playing around with the actual the tapered flute section that divides the air, splits the air, which gives us the whistle. And all of this, again, I was a band geek, but you know, in so many ways, so many principles of sound and music are still very new to me. So I'm not going to act like not going to act like I know everything. But what I did find was, give me a second. All right, I had this yesterday. So it's a lot like, you know, the older flutes that we're used to, like the band instruments where you're whistling over the, however they do that. I only, my sister played the flute for a little bit, so I had time to get my hands on that, but I've never actually fully practiced the full-on, I don't even know what it's called, it's just band flute. But yeah, so yeah, that's right. So, in understanding this, you could create basically your standard recorder, which has the hole at the bottom. I did try putting a hole here and mess with it, seeing if the thumb allows a necessary pitch change that doesn't distort the sound too much, but it just wasn't. It didn't allow function all the way throughout the flute. Now, the only reason why I would actually add a hole here is because I'm just always holding my thumb there. And so it wouldn't really make a difference. It's not like I'm getting all stylish and trying to do this thing one-handed and get all Jethro Tull with it and stuff like that. But so in understanding that it's likely that tapered notch, it was probably unintentional to a number of extents and then refined over time as people realize that when you divide the air through a what, an isosceles triangle, fuck, basically, you know, it creates a division, and so in creating a high pressure zone or division of the air, you actually get that hoot toot sound, hooty tooty. And I find it very exciting at this point. Very basic stuff, but just being able to take this and use it as a reference, and my measurements certainly weren't exact, but to take this one that actually comes in as a C and then make this one that comes in as a C sharp, I feel this is a really great start, really great prototype. And ultimately, I think it may get the C sharp because I have a larger volume here. This part is hollow, so it creates what I'm calling a throat. This is a concept that's just, it was style, and then I'm like, wait a minute, does the extra space chamber, does the drop in the flow create a difference in pressure? But that's still stuff that needs to be considered and studied. I feel that the length is good, and it's mostly the ceramic material, the larger pre-chamber, and then I understand that there are factors in the actual whistle itself, and how you shape it, that can determine you know, your division of air and the frequency and resonation or hertz, you know, that come from a note. So C sharp, at least if my cheap app is good enough, it's telling me it's a C sharp. One thing I noticed in trying to experiment, though, is that, excuse me, I wanted to see if there was a difference in how it sounds if I were to actually create a horn cone shape. So I took a paper or toilet paper roll and just create a very quick modification, just a. And I noticed it's a lot lower, so I believe I have to push the bridge stopper closer. Nope. See, I believe then I have to push it back. So this is new. So I thought it would make it louder. Obviously, somebody would assume that if you speak through something like this, it makes it louder. But in this case, it actually makes it softer, and it even loses the pressure, because I understand, like a Venturi system, there's a certain amount of back pressure from the air basically being contained within the volume. And so I thought it would actually make it louder, but it makes it softer because it divides the back pressure differently from what my brain can visualize in that sense. So what I did in trying to make sure that I actually had a better understanding of this is I moved this up to where I could block the last hole just right here. And then I tried, oh, hang on. And then I tried the notes. So it doesn't sound much different. Maybe it makes it a little bit softer. Maybe it brings it down closer to that C natural instead of the C sharp. But what the most interesting thing was is when it was up here, I could make, I think this is a G sharp, but I can make a better, oh, I gotta push this forward for the higher notes. Give me a moment. then when I let this drop, like from here, and I actually just like played, it made my high notes way too soft. So ultimately, with this little adaptation, I pretty much learned that you only want these conical shapes if you're dealing with like a trumpet, from what I understand, because you're actually like creating it's creating a different kind of frequency. It's creating a different kind of sound pressure, and it's definitely doesn't emphasize the use of the flute, where I found that it mostly has to do with this diameter, the length, and your whole set, as well as your pre-chamber and your bridge and your post-chamber, which is what maybe this extra space right in here that allows the sound to move down creates a higher pitch. Ultimately, these are a lot of questions that I have, and I only started to really wondering about this like a couple weeks ago, and I give it a little bit of energy here and there and think about it and try to figure it out. Ultimately, yeah, I love things like this because it's an adventure in itself. I know that I could go find a master. I know that I could go on the internet and find answers right away. But my concern isn't finding answers that are not only right, but my goal is to find answers that aren't necessarily somebody else's, but answers that are my own. And if I actually like find that the answers I come to are shared with other people, then I feel like I'm on the right path. When I find answers that aren't working for me, that are different from other people's, then I allow myself a compare and contrast. So in the meantime, I only seek doing this without any advice at the moment, without any experience of anything except for the prior history of music playing and band class and singing that I've had, stuff like that, right? I'm trying to control the sound waves and vibrations in this world that we have around us. Um, I find that I like it because there's an unknown, and even though all the answers are around me everywhere, even though they're there available to me and I may learn a bit slower, I love finding the answers for myself and really getting in touch with how they mean something to me. And that in itself, which is one reason why I started this project. Not only that, but when I'm really fucking feeling like crap, this flute this flute and singing has been really the only two instruments that have actually brought me some peace and comfort and some just mellow, easygoing, just energy that isn't all hypertensive and shit like that this world is driving on us or driving us into and stuff. So anyway, I'm going to just riff out a little spliff and smoke that shit and hope it sounds good, and then we're gonna call this video good, and I hope you like it. Anyway, thank you for your time. Again, I cut my finger, so working with the pinky is hard. Now, you may notice that on the lower frequencies and some of the frequencies, you'll hear a form of vibrato because in breathing, the vibrato doesn't necessarily come from. It doesn't come from I think this is the uvula should be the little thing that drops in your throat and it goes like that. Vibrato doesn't come from the uvula. It'd be like ah ah ah. Like, vibrato comes from a proper tone, a proper pressure in your diaphragm and your lungs, and the harmony and the flow of breath creates a resonation that undulates. And in so many ways, when you get this right, you have no control over the undulation, which is known as vibrato, in my opinion. But in working with this flute and the lower sound, I could hold a steady tone, but there's a certain element of pressure manipulation in my diaphragm that comes from singing, and just feeling the sound and the resonation it wants to create. I actually force a vibrato on the flute, just to give it a much more mellower, easier, wavier sound, like. And it's something I'm still working on. It's not perfect. Like, it takes getting caught in the music and stuff like that, and just. And it's a lot of fun and exploring that. And there's other things like the and various different stops of the tongue. And so, yeah, doing that, you can make something that sounds Australian Aboriginal, maybe, like. And in itself, these flutes are known as the easiest devices to play, which in themselves requires no sense of instrument control, just a sense of tone. If you can tell the difference between a and a, they don't go together unless you have some melancholy, some disharmony. But in the higher notes, that's where I like to work with them, because I thought I'd just stay here, but. And the fingery flutter is just emphasis. It's something that you can feel. It comes natural because you like, in learning the beginning, you're uncertain about your fingers, but then when you get the flutter difference between the two notes, it adds a very nice, wholesome, natural feel. And the flute is very forgiving in that transition. So. Anyway, before I make this video too long, we're up to 23, going on 25 minutes now. I just want to say this is the beginning of something I really wish to pursue in other videos on this channel. I will provide more experience in ceramic manipulation that I have available to me, as I have spent certainly enough time and enough classes and enough years actually working with the clay since high school. And in itself, it's a form of practice and material I can never let go of. So from this point, I'm going to do a basic underglaze, underglaze black, and then I'm going to make sure I throw a test piece of the red in there so that the red will come out nice on there and the hearts. And then I'm going to have an Aztec gold, so it'll be a nice gold red Love Flute. My very first ceramic Love Flute. So anyway, I will post more, and I hope you enjoy this and some of my rambling. Hopefully it was coherent enough for you to actually stay with me. In the meantime, let's make another one after this. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Happy New Year.